صلى الله على محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Sahih Bukhari, the Book of Loans, Payment of Loans, Freezing of Property, and Bankruptcy. Chapter on whoever buys a thing on credit and does not have its price or has it, but not at the place of the transaction. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them. While I was in the company of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in one of his ghazawat, he asked, "What is wrong with your camel? Will you sell it?" I replied in the affirmative and sold it to him. When he reached Al-Madinah, I took the camel to him in the morning, and he paid me its price. Narrated Al-A'mash, when we were with Ibrahim, we talked about mortgaging in deals of salam. Ibrahim narrated from Aswad that Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, had said, "The Prophet, peace be upon him, bought some foodstuff on credit from a Jew and mortgaged an iron armor to him." Chapter on whoever takes the money of the people intending to repay it, or to destroy it, or to spoil it. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever takes the money of the people with the intention of repaying it, Allah will repay it on his behalf. And whoever takes it in order to destroy it, then Allah will destroy him." Chapter on repayment of debts. And the statement of Allah, "Verily, Allah commands that you should render back the trust to those to whom they are due, and that when you judge between men, you judge with justice. Verily, how excellent is the teaching which He, Allah, gives you. Truly, Allah is ever all-hearer, all-seer." Quran, chapter 4, verse 58. Narrated Abu Dharr, may Allah be pleased with him. Once, while I was in the company of the Prophet, peace be upon him, he saw the mountain of Uhud and said, "I would not like to have this mountain turned into gold for me, unless nothing of it, not even a single dinar, remains of it with me for more than 3 days. That is, I will spend all of it in Allah's cause, except that dinar which I will keep for repaying debts." Then he said, "Those who are rich in this world would have little reward in the hereafter, except those who spend their money here and there in Allah's cause, and they are few in number." Then he ordered me to stay at my place and went not far away. I heard a voice and intended to go to him, but I remembered his order, "Stay at your place till I return." On his return, I asked, "O Allah's Messenger, what was that noise which I heard?" He said, "Did you hear anything?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Jibreel, Gabriel, peace be upon him, came to me and said, 'Whoever amongst you followers dies, worshipping none along with Allah, will enter paradise.'" I said, "Even if he did such and such things, that is, even if he stole or committed illegal sexual intercourse?" He, peace be upon him, said, "Yes." Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, "If I had gold equal to the mountain of Uhud, it would not please me that it should remain with me for more than 3 days, except an amount which I would keep for repaying debts." Chapter on to buy camels on credit. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him, a man demanded his debts from Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, in such a rude manner that the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, intended to harm him. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Leave him. No doubt, for he, the creditor, has a right to demand it harshly. Buy a camel and give it to him." They said, "The camel that is available is older and better than the camel he demands." The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Buy it and give it to him, for the best among you are those who repay their debts handsomely." Chapter on demanding debts handsomely. Narrated Hudhayfah, may Allah be pleased with him, I heard the Prophet, peace be upon him, saying, once a man died and was asked, what did you use to say or do in your lifetime? He replied, I was a businessman and used to give time to the rich to repay his debt, and used to deduct part of the debt of the poor. So he was forgiven his sins. Abu Mas'ud said, I heard the same hadith from the Prophet, peace be upon him. Chapter on Can one give an older camel than that he owes? Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. A man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and demanded a camel. The Prophet, peace be upon him, owed him. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, told his companions to give him a camel. They said, we do not find except an older and better camel than what he demands. The Prophet, peace be upon him, ordered them to give him that camel. The man said, you have paid me in full, and may Allah also pay you in full. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, give him, for the best amongst the people is he who repays his debts in the most handsome manner. Chapter on Repaying Debts Handsomely. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, owed a camel of a certain age to a man who came to demand it back. The Prophet, peace be upon him, ordered his companions to give him. They looked for a camel of the same age, but found nothing but a camel 1 year older. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told them to give it to him. The man said, you have paid me in full, and may Allah pay you in full. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, the best amongst you is he who pays his debts in the most handsome manner. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them. I went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, while he was in the mosque. Mis'ar thinks that Jabir went in the forenoon. The Prophet, peace be upon him, told me to offer 2 rak'ah prayer, and then he repaid me the debt he owed me, and give me an extra amount. Chapter on If somebody repays less than what he owes, and the creditor accepts it, or if the creditor exempts the debtor from paying, there is no objection. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them. My father was martyred on the day of the Battle of Uhud, and he was in debt. His creditors demanded their rights persistently. I went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and informed him about it. He told them to take the fruits of my garden and exempt my father from the debts, but they refused to do so. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not give them my garden, and told me that he would come to me the next morning. He came to us early in the morning and wandered among the date palms and invoked Allah to bless their fruits. I then plucked the dates and paid the creditors, and there remained some of the dates for us. Chapter on It is permissible for one to settle one's accounts by repaying for the dates one owes, dates or other things, and one can repay them without weighing or measuring them, if the creditor agrees. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them, when my father died, he owed a Jew 30 awsaq of dates. I requested him to give me respite for repaying, but he refused. I requested Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, to intercede with the Jew. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, went to the Jew and asked him to accept the fruits of my trees in place of the debt, but the Jew refused. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, entered the garden of the date palms, wandering among the trees, and ordered me, saying, pluck the fruits and give him his due. So I plucked the fruits for him after the departure of Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and gave his 30 awsaq, and still had 17 awsaq extra for myself. Jabir said, I went to Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, to inform of what had happened, but found him offering the Asr prayer. After the Salah, prayer, I told him about the extra fruits which remained. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, told me to inform Umar ibn al-Khattab about it. When I went to Umar and told him about it, Umar said, "When Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, walked in your garden, I was sure that Allah would definitely bless it." Chapter on whoever seeks refuge with Allah from being in debt. Narrated Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, used to invoke Allah in the Salah, prayer, saying, "O Allah, I seek refuge with you from all sins and from being in debt." Someone said, "O Allah's Messenger, I see very often you seek refuge with Allah from being in debt." He replied, "If a person is in debt, he tells lies when he speaks and breaks his promises when he promises." Chapter on the funeral Salah, prayer for a dead person in debt. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "If someone leaves some property, it will be for the inheritors, and if he leaves some weak offspring, it will be for us to support them." Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "I am closer to the believers than their own selves in this world and in the hereafter. And if you like, you can read Allah's statement. The Prophet is closer to the believers than their own selves." Quran, chapter 33, verse 6. So if a true believer dies and leaves behind some property, it will be for his inheritors from the father's side, and if he leaves behind some debt to be paid or needy offspring, then they should come to me, as I am the guardian of the deceased. Chapter on procrastination, delay in repaying debts by a wealthy person is injustice. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, "Procrastination, delay in repaying debts by a wealthy person is injustice." Chapter on the owner of the right has the permission to demand his right. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The delay in the payment of debt by one who can afford to pay justifies his defamation and torture by the lender." Defamation means that the lender tells him in public that he has delayed the payment. Torture means legal imprisonment. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. A man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and demanded his debts and used harsh words. The companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, wanted to harm him. But the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Leave him. As the creditor, one who has a right has the full right to demand it or to speak harshly." Chapter on if somebody lends something or sells it on credit or deposits it as a trust, and the new possessor gets bankrupt, the former owner has more right than the other creditors to restore that thing if he finds it with the bankrupt. Al-Hasan said, "If somebody becomes bankrupt and he is judged to be so, he is not permitted to free his slave or sell or buy things." Sa'id bin al-Musayyib said, Uthman gave a verdict that if a creditor took something from the debtor before the latter was declared bankrupt, it would belong to him. That is, the other creditors would have no right to take it, and if the creditor recognized his things, he had more right to restore them than any other creditor. Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, said, "If a man finds his very things with a bankrupt, he has more right to take them back than anyone else." Chapter on whoever delayed the repayment of debts for a day or so and did not regard it as procrastination. Jabir said, "When the creditors of my father demanded their rights persistently, the Prophet, peace be upon him, requested them to take the fruits of my garden instead of the debt, but they refused. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, neither gave them the fruits, nor had the fruits plucked for them, but said, 'I will come to you tomorrow, He came to us early in the morning and invoked Allah to bless the garden's fruits, and so I paid the creditors their rights. Chapter on whoever sold the property of a bankrupt or a poor man and divided the money amongst the creditors, or gave it piecemeal to the man to spend it on his affairs. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with them. A man pledged that his slave would be manumitted after his death. The Prophet, peace be upon him, asked, "Who will buy the slave from me?" Nu'aym bin Abdullah bought the slave, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, took its price and gave it to the owner. Footnote: regarding the question, "Who will buy the slave from me?" means the man became in need or in debt, so the Prophet, peace be upon him, sold the slave for him, although he had promised that he would be manumitted after his death. Chapter on it is permissible to lend money for a fixed time or sell on credit for a fixed time. Ibn Umar said concerning loans for a fixed time, "There is no objection to it, even if the debtor gives more than he owes, if the creditor has not stipulated it." Adhaan and Amr bin Dinar said, "The lender has no right to demand his money before the due time of payment." Narrated Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, mentioned an Israeli man who asked another Israeli to lend him money, and the latter gave it to him for a fixed period. Abu Hurairah mentioned the rest of the narration. See chapter Kafala in loans and debts. Hadith 2291. Chapter on intercession for the reduction of debts. Narrated Jabir, may Allah be pleased with him, when Abdullah, my father, died, he left behind children and debts. I asked the lenders to put down some of his debt, but they refused. So I went to the Prophet, peace be upon him, to intercede with them. Yet they refused. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said to me, "Classify your dates into their different kinds. Rizq ibn Zayd, Lin and Ajwa, each kind separately, and call all the creditors, and wait till I come to you." I did so. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, came and sat beside the dates and started measuring to each his due till he paid them fully. And the amount of dates remained as it was before, so if he had not touched them. On another occasion, I took part in one of Ghazawat along with the Prophet, peace be upon him, and I was riding one of our camels. The camel got tired and was lagging behind the others. The Prophet, peace be upon him, hit it on its back. He said, "Sell it to me, and you have the right to ride it till Al-Madinah." When we approached Al-Madinah, I took the permission from the Prophet, peace be upon him, to go to my house, saying, "O Allah's Messenger, I am married recently." The Prophet, peace be upon him, asked, "Have you married a virgin or a matron, a widow or a divorcee?" I said, "I have married a matron. As Abdullah, my father, died and left behind daughters small in their ages, so I married a matron who may teach them and bring them up with good manners." The Prophet, peace be upon him, then said to me, "Go to your family." When I went there and told my maternal uncle about the selling of the camel, he admonished me for it. On that, I told him about its slowness and exhaustion, and about what the Prophet, peace be upon him, had done to the camel and his hitting it. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, arrived, I went to him with the camel in the morning, and he gave me the price of the camel and the camel itself, and also my share from the war booty, as he gave the other people. Chapter on what is forbidden as regards wasting money. And the statement of Allah, "And Allah likes no mischief." Quran, chapter 2, verse 205. Verily, Allah does not set right the work of al-Mufsidun, the evildoers, corrupters. Quran, chapter 10, verse 81. And the statement of Allah, "Does your salah, prayer, command that we give up with our fathers used to worship, or that we give up doing what we like with our property. Quran, chapter 11, verse 87. Allah also said, "And give not unto the foolish your property." Quran, chapter 4, verse 5. And to keep away from all these things, and also what is forbidden as regards deceit. Narrated Ibn Umar, may Allah be pleased with them. A man came to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, "I am often betrayed in bargaining." The Prophet, peace be upon him, advised him, "When you buy something, say to the seller, 'No deception.'" The man used to say so afterwards. Narrated al-Mughirah bin Shu'bah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Allah has forbidden for you 1. To be undutiful to your mothers. 2. To bury your daughters alive. 3. To not to pay the rights of the poor and others, for example, charity. And 4. To beg of men, that is, begging. And Allah hates for you 1. Qil and qal, sinful and useless talk like backbiting, or that you talk too much about others. 2. To ask too many questions in disputed religious matters. And 3. To waste the wealth by extravagance with lack of wisdom and thinking. Chapter on a slave is a guardian of the property of his master, and he should not use it except with the master's permission. Narrated Abdullah bin Umar, may Allah be pleased with them. I heard Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, saying, "Every one of you is a guardian and responsible for what is in his custody. The ruler is a guardian of his subjects and responsible for them. A husband is guardian of his family and is responsible for it. A lady is a guardian of her husband's house and is responsible for it. And a servant is a guardian of his master's property and is responsible for it." I heard that from Allah's Messenger, peace be upon him, and I think that the Prophet, peace be upon him, also said, "A man is a guardian of his father's property and is responsible for it. So all of you are guardians and responsible for your wards and things under your care."